This is the Cherryleaf podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Cherryleaf podcast. Hopefully, you have seen from us on some of the social media sites some new promotional marketing content from us. A little bit different from the content that we've done in the past. And I thought it might be useful to explain what that content is and the reasoning behind it. In recent episodes on the podcast, we've talked about how the world is changing as a consequence of AI. And that is affecting the marketing aspect of how businesses operate. Search engines are changing. Now, many search engines have an AI summary at the top that provide the answers, the information that people want. And that's resulting in fewer visitors to websites because people don't need to click through to get to the information. With social media over maybe the last 12 months, 18 months, you've seen a change with sites like X, what was Twitter, and others where there's more conflict, there's more outrage to gain people's attention. And even with business focus sites like LinkedIn, there's an awful lot of noise, or certainly from the feed that I get, with a lot of content of people selling their wares. For example, lots of posts about how to write your CV or solutions and products that could make your CV better. And also we've seen the growth of TikTok and YouTube Shorts, which are very visually orientated and limited to 30 or 60 seconds. Now that means for businesses, as the channels have changed, they need to look at and consider whether their marketing activities need to change and adapt as well, in case the old and the current ways might very quickly not work as very well or as effectively as they had done before. That doesn't mean there's still value in posting to sites like LinkedIn, but the question is, how can you promote your business in a way that it just isn't noise like so many other posts and information that's on there? And we also received email newsletter from Matthew Berman in which he talked about ways of generating 30, 50 pieces of content from one single video and using AI to streamline the workflow, make that very automated. And also there has been a podcast launched by the Museum of English Rural Life called the Absolute Unit podcast. And this started to trigger ideas and thoughts as to whether we should start to do some new things, try some things out, and get a bit more busy with the marketing that we do. I mentioned the Merl. The Merl is the Museum of English Rural Life. It's a very small museum in Reading about farming and things to do with rural life in England over time, over the past. And they, in 2018, published a tweet that went viral. It went so viral that Elon Musk changed his picture on Twitter to be the picture of a sheep from the post that they sent out. And the post said, "Look at this absolute unit." It led to press articles and lots of awareness of the museum. And then they followed it up with a series of other tweets, which again became very popular. Lots of people commenting, liking, reposting. And that led to a lot of people wanting to emulate that success. And so when it came to thinking about what could we do to do some more promotional marketing activities, my mind was, can we learn anything from the Merl without directly copying what they did. So, for example, posting something the equivalent of a sheep, doing something interesting without it being too hackneyed. So, to do that, and how could we do that? The approach that we took was to ask a number of chatbots to analyse why the museum had been so successful. And we put in a prompt: can you explain why the Museum of English Rural Life has been so successful? Are there lessons that other organisations can learn from their approach? The chatbots came up with pretty similar conclusions, the different chatbots that we asked. The best answers came from the new thinking chatbots that can go off and do research, look at different websites and gather information. And let me go through or read out the information, the response that we got from ChatGPT in terms of actionable lessons drawn from the Merl's approach. First thing they said was embrace an authentic, platform-appropriate voice. Don't be afraid to shed the overly formal institutional tone if it doesn't fit the platform. Merl found success by adopting a playful, human voice on Twitter, using memes and slang that felt natural to online discourse. The key is authenticity. Humour works when it genuinely aligns with your content and staff personality. Avoid forced jokes or outdated references that come off as naff. Instead, engage in the way real people on that platform do. This might mean a bit of irreverence or sarcasm, which is okay if done in good spirit. Takeaway: develop a social media persona that is friendly and relatable, even if that means being less formal, so that users feel a human connection. The second point they mentioned was leverage unique content. Find your memeable assets. Every organisation has something special that could capture the internet's interest. It might be an unusual photograph, a quirky object, a little-known story, or even a charismatic staff member. Merl looked at its collections through a social media lens and identified gold nuggets like an absurdly large sheep photo or a funny historic doodle, that being the chicken in trousers, that could serve as a conversation piece. Crucially, they framed these assets in an engaging way, for example, a 3-word humorous caption, rather than a traditional descriptive way. Takeaway: audit your content for items that are visually striking, surprising, or amusing. Don't underestimate what might fascinate the public. Even a dry archive can contain oddities. Package those finds with a hook, a witty caption, a question, a challenge that draws people in. As Merl showed, one great piece of content can be a gateway to your entire brand. Third point: join conversations and use timely hooks. Merl's virality wasn't pure luck. They often tied posts to trending topics or communal experiences. They riffed on National Unicorn Day, Year of the Pig, and even started their own trending battles. By doing so, they inserted the museum into broader social media conversations already happening. Takeaway: be attuned to hashtags, holidays, memes, or news events that relate even loosely to your mission. Plan content around known seasonal trends, for example, Easter, Halloween, but leave room for spontaneous piggybacking on viral memes, provided you can add a clever twist that aligns with your identity. This helps expose your account to people following those trends. However, ensure you understand the context. Do some quick research so you don't accidentally jump on a problematic bandwagon. Fourth point was encourage engagement. Don't just broadcast. The real magic of Merl's strategy was treating social media as a dialogue. When your audience replies or comments, seize the opportunity to respond and build rapport. Merl literally spent hours bantering with users, making puns and personal asides, which made followers feel seen and part of a community. This kept people talking about the content, increasing its reach, and fostered loyalty. Likewise, inviting participation through polls. Should we post fat animals? Yes or no? Turns passive viewers into active contributors. Takeaway: devote time to interaction. Even a small social media team can prioritize one viral moment to engage deeply. Ask questions in your posts, reply with jokes or additional facts, and acknowledge users who amplify your content. By creating a sense of conversation, you make your audience invested in your success. The next point they said on my list was blend education with entertainment. Merl mastered the art of the hook and reel. They hooked people with humour, then reeled them in with interesting context about the subject. For example, after amusing everyone with a meme, they followed up with a thread explaining the artifact's history and why it mattered. This meant new followers actually learnt something and saw the intellectual value behind the joke. Takeaway: don't shy away from fun content out of fear it dumbs down your mission. Instead, use it as a gateway. Once you have the eyeballs, deliver substance in a digestible way. This could be a short explainer video, a blog link, or a series of tweets that add context to the initial post. Done right, people will appreciate that you took them from a laugh to a deeper understanding. In other words, edutainment works. The entertainment earns you the right to educate. Some points were less relevant to our situation, so I'll skip over those and jump to the last point that came up, and that was Merl's experience underlines the importance of measuring what matters and being willing to adapt strategies. Merl collected outcomes, that is, follower stats, web hits, media mentions, and presented them to the board to show the value of the viral campaign. They also reflected on what went wrong and made adjustments. So takeaway: track metrics like engagement, reach, and conversion to websites or sign-ups when you run a campaign. Use those numbers along with anecdotes to demonstrate impact to stakeholders. So from that, there were a few important lessons for us at Cherryleaf. One was to have an authentic voice appropriate to our organisation, to provide education as well as humour when providing information, when doing posts, to engage, to reply to comments that people might post about their thoughts on what we have published, what we have written. Having asked the chatbots to look at Merl, what we had done is primed them for giving us the right type of answer or response to this question. Can you suggest some topics or posts that a technical writing services company could post using a similar approach to the Merl? Let me go through some of the suggestions that they made, and then let's talk about the ones that we decided to adopt. A common suggestion was to do variations or tweaks on popular social media memes. So things like the distracted boyfriend, the Drake image of him looking sad and then looking happy, and a number on those. One that was suggested was relatable pain points. So you had Drake looking displeased and a quotation, feedback, it's confusing, and then next to the picture of Drake looking approving or happy, it says feedback on page 5, section 2.1, the third sentence needs clarification on X because of Y. Another suggestion was humorous content with technical value. So talking about documentation disasters, sharing real examples of confusing instructions or poorly written manuals, and explain how they could be fixed. Another was a technical jargon translator, create posts that translate complex technical terms into plain English with a funny twist. And also if technical writing existed in historical events, reimagine historical moments with proper documentation, such as the Trojan Horse, or not quite historical, but the Death Star from Star Wars. Another suggestion was historical throwbacks, to look at old manuals and compare and contrast them to how they would be written today. Another suggestion was if technical writers had superpowers, and to create a mini comic or list like X-ray vision. See missing content, text immediately. Mind reading, know what the confused user is actually asking. Time travel, prevent future maintenance disasters. There were some suggestions of funny graphs over how readers feel over time. And technical writing bingo, create bingo cards with common challenges and invite followers to share their experiences. Some other suggestions, behind the scenes information. Quirky items technical writers keep on their desks. Before and after makeovers, transformation of documents. Technical writers in the wild, observations of team members actually visiting clients or interacting with engineers. And then some others were doing some industry commentary, creating interactive content and bringing value through humour. Some suggestions on those themes. So we decided to adopt and try some of those, and you might have, if you've seen some of the posts, some of those suggestions might be ones that you recognise, and we took some ideas and adapted them. So the memes, we did try the Drake meme. The other memes didn't feel quite us, and they did feel a little bit old-fashioned and hackneyed. We did adopt the idea of the technical writer superpower. And what we did was we created a little image of a technical writer with a cape, and then around the writer, their superpowers, that they could see missing context, they could understand what the confused user is actually asking, they could prevent future maintenance disasters. And that went down very well. We've had so far, after about 10 days, over 4,000 impressions on LinkedIn. The other LinkedIn stats were 119 reactions. That's where people click the like button, 5 comments, 13 reposts. The suggestion of bingo prompted the idea of creating a bingo card. If you've watched Fake or Fortune on the BBC or Grand Designs, and you've also been looking at your social media when the program's been on, one of the things that you sometimes see are bingo cards related to Fake or Fortune or Grand Designs. So there's a little card and a square, and you can tick off if you see Philip Mould wearing a scarf, or if catalogue raisonné is mentioned during the show. So we had the idea, could we create a bingo board of all the most common experiences that technical writers have? And we added in some suggestions of our own. We did some testing within a group and got some more feedback and ideas. And then we asked the chatbot if it could generate the image of the board. Essentially saying, can you suggest some items that could go into a technical writing bingo card? This is for fun. And then here is our list of items. Can you create an image? And we posted that about a week ago, just over a week ago, to LinkedIn and to Blue Sky. And that really took off. So far, in about 8 days, we've had 13,363 impressions. We've had 406 reactions, again, thumbs up, people liking it. We've had 71 people comment on the card, and we've had 67 people repost that card to their network. And taking on board the suggestions about how the Merl has done it, we also added an educational follow-up post to that original funny post. And that was, what does this image tell us about technical writers and the work they do? And then we answered that question, that technical writing is not just about producing content, it's about navigating uncertainty, often operating with incomplete or shifting inputs. It's about advocating for the user. It's about working in the gaps between different teams in an organization, often serving as translators between different departments. And it's about maintaining clarity in a complex environment, adapting constantly as the product evolves, and doing all of that with patience, humor, and persistence. And that led to a couple of other ideas for games that could be adapted to a technical writing theme. One of which was a fantasy role-playing game. And we had the idea of dungeons and documents, and a card of challenges or quests that somebody might have to face related to technical writing, and characters that somebody might meet in a Dungeons and Dragons type world where the characters are on a technical writing theme. The quest board has things like defeat the passive voice spectre, track down the vanishing SME, restore the lost alt text, localize the ancient scroll. And the character classes are things like a style paladin who enforces the sacred style guide scrolls, and a tool warlock who draws power from obscure documentation, tools and command line interface magic. Oh, there's also the wandering SME who comes and goes and adds cryptic lore. And then monsters and obstacles, things like the merge conflict hydra, the approval troll, the meeting that could be an email, the ancient PDF of online origin, and so on. And that one has gone down quite well also. Another one that we took up was the idea of demystifying jargon, but doing it with a little bit of a twist and a humour. So a little less educational than what you might find on an SEO orientated post or article on a website explaining single sourcing or localization or docs as code. Just doing those types of topics in a very short amount of text, something suitable that can go out on Blue Sky, can go out on LinkedIn. And we've got just over 20 of those so far written, and they're going out over this month and next month on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky, providing a bit of information with a little bit of humour to explain those topics. Is it working as a marketing strategy? One of the points that the chatbots highlighted was the importance of monitoring the impact and adapting. In terms of the amount of people viewing and us being able to get their attention, these have been the most successful social media posts that we have done. And in terms of increasing the amount of people that want to join, as it were, to my network on LinkedIn, probably seen 60 invitations since those posts started to come out. And we've also seen a rise in the amount of people subscribing to our e-learning courses in this week. And that may or may not be related to the posts that we have been doing. That one's a little bit harder to tell whether it's correlation or causation. We will find out with the posts that are coming up whether we continue to see an increase in the amount of people connecting with me, because we've decided to do this through my account, Ellis Pratt that is, whether that continues and whether we also see this uptick part of this is to start a conversation, just to get people aware of who we are, to think of us in a positive light. So if someone is asked whether they can recommend a technical writing company, or a company that provides training related to technical services or can provide contract technical authors, that they recommend us. It's a pretty soft sell. It's showing that we know our stuff, we're engaging, and hopefully that will then encourage people to contact us as and when they have a need. Next, we have some ideas for how we can create content for TikTok and YouTube Shorts that's consistent with our values, our brand, that can be done in a way that will also, we hope, grab people's attentions. And that's in its early days at the moment, but that's something else that we plan to do. What about yourself? This approach can be adapted and can be used by others. For organisations that are outside of technical writing, they can also do their own equivalent bingo cards, their own equivalent memes relating to their subject, where they can talk in an entertaining way about the issues around the problems that they deal with and solve, the services they provide. And it can also be used by other technical writers to promote themselves, and that might be internally within an organisation with a bit of humour, creating a sort of a cartoon image or something like that to explain humorously the value that they provide and what they do. And there were a number of suggestions that don't fit with us that might fit with other people's style, which we've shared on the podcast, and you're welcome to take those ideas and run with them. So that's what we're covering for this podcast. If you haven't seen some of these posts, I encourage you to go and look on Blue Sky and LinkedIn. If you look under my name, it's Ellis Pratt. Future ones might go under the Cherryleaf ID that we have on both LinkedIn, both on LinkedIn and on Blue Sky. We'll also provide links to some of those posts in the show notes with this podcast episode. And if you've got any thoughts on those on LinkedIn, just add your comments to the thread. That's very welcome. And if you've got other thoughts and ideas on types of posts and approaches that can be done, we're always interested in those as well. I should mention we do a newsletter with useful information for technical authors. That goes out once a month. You can subscribe to that and we'll send you that information. Primarily informative, educational information rather than a lot of information promoting our services. There is some, but not much. So do sign up to that as well. And so for this month and for this episode, I would like to say thank you for listening.